23 kilometres around this racetrack. 11 corners and a great mix of fast, medium and slow corners with an average speed that ranks right up there, just under 170 kilometres an hour. Top speed is 255. And as far as the numeracy is concerned, compared to many of the other tracks that we go to, not a really big number, but it's where they do it and how they do it that's really extraordinary. And the run into turn one is fantastic. Incredibly brave, exciting and spectacular corner with the supercar. They leap and dance over the top of the curbing down there. Threading the cars through 2, 3 and 4 is a real challenge in itself, and we've seen a lot of errors over the years. Getting onto the back straight, Craig Lowndes just explained a few moments ago, is incredibly important. Traction is vitally important there in getting everything to the road efficiently so that you can get a decent run up the back straight where there's a crosswind today. And this changed in 2013, this little dogleg section that brings you down to turn 8, the hairpin, slowest corner on the track, first gear, and then cars launching back out and building speed to more than 210 kilometres an hour on average when you get to that left-hander at 10, where Fabian Coulthard came unglued in the last several years. And then through the last corner, where earlier today, Richie Stanaway, unfortunately making a little mistake in practice, ran wide, clobbered the concrete wall there, and some damage done to the Boost Mobile Gary Rogers Motorsport entry. Coming into the weekend, champ points, and the margin eased out between McLaughlin and Mostert. Fabian Coulthard dropping into 3rd position, Shane Van Gisbergen in 4th position. So further off that chart there also, Anton Di Pasquale's now moved into the top 10, and his competitive position in the recent past has been confirmed in that team, and he's been running pretty quickly, so he's also sneaking towards the top. Looking forward to seeing all these guys and one girl in action this afternoon. The fastest car in the previous session was Will Davison, Milwaukee Racing, on the podium at Tailem Bend last time out. Good to see a little bit of sunshine on the cars, but in the background you can see some of those grey, heavily laden clouds, and it's just on 14.5 degrees here at the moment. The wind all day has been generally from the westerly direction, which means when they come down this front straight, and the pit lane exit there is adjacent to the front straight, as you look on the screen, it's from right to left as the cars head out. So 30 vital minutes. They've effectively lost a lot of the learning time in that first practice session. And if you've only just joined the coverage, significant aero changes to the Holden Commodore since the last time out at Tailem Bend. And so really critical for lots of these teams and drivers that are running the Holden at the moment to get an understanding of what that does. Car number 17 in the garage. I could even hear Greg Murphy in the background saying, wouldn't it start? Scott McLaughlin is our championship leader. Mark Scapes made his way back into the commentary box, and though it doesn't contribute to qualifying, Mark, the importance of this session is to jam-pack the learning, because they've really got to then carry everything that they get out of these next, whatever it is, 28 minutes and 56 seconds into qualifying, and that's going to be key.
Absolutely, and with the damp conditions earlier this morning, it's limited their running, and for those Commodores that have had that little aero tweak that you've spoken of, this will be a very important session. It's also very important because when we do a flyaway weekend, everybody has a green tyre. They have brand new tyres for the whole weekend, and that, from a tyre perspective, is a very good way to approach the weekend, a level playing field, and I'll get a feel straight away. Gregory Murphy is down in the pit lane, Murph.
Yeah, there's still an issue here with the 17. It actually won't start. You can see the umbilical cord's actually plugged in there just behind Scott's name on the B pillar. The computer is plugged in. Richard Harris is right here communicating with Scott, but they just tried to fire it up just then, turned it over, and it wouldn't go. So at the moment, they had the bonnet up, they've put it back down, and there's a bit of shaking head going on with what's going on with the laptop there at the moment. So not going anywhere. No panic as such yet with the 17, but it is, yeah, still doesn't look like they know what the problem is. There we go. We're just going to see if it fires up. You can hear the starter motor going over, and it doesn't actually sound like it's engaging that well on the starter either, Scapey.
Yeah, it sounds bad.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
It's having a odd skip through the starter motor, but it, as you can hear, is still not even sounding like it wants to go.
Yeah, that's weird. I heard you in discussion in the background there before, Murph, and remember that Scott was second fastest in that last session. It was only 7/100ths. That's Ben Croak on the front left-hand corner of the screen, right-hand corner of the car. Back to Will Davison, who was the fastest man. So we'll come back to what's going on in the garage at Shell V-Power Racing. Milwaukee Racing, though, terrific performance at Tailem Bend, and a great start to the weekend here in the dying seconds of practice one. Good pace and went to the top of the charts. This is a bird's eye view of that run into turn 1 that I described before, and they've rolled 17 back into the garage.
Will Davison, sorry, Neil, that lap that we just finished on did a 2.4, so he's gone fastest again there, sorry.
And he did a 2.4 in the last one, Mark. So he did a 1 minute 2.4451. That one was a 4200, so it's just a tiny bit quicker than previously. Lee Holdsworth's all but mirrored that time. Shane Van Gisbergen's on a very good lap here. That's the reason why we've picked him up. He's got his teammate Jamie Whincup in behind. 6 wins, 6 poles, and a couple of Jason Richards trophies to his credit. We're racing this weekend for the Jason Richards Memorial Trophy, one of the great superstars of supercar racing, and one of our friends that we sadly lost in 2011. His family are going to be here this weekend. Now, Gizzy's just jumped up and done a 1 minute 2.4. How's the number, Mark? He's 2/100ths of a second slower than Will Davison. And then it's a crazy 4/100ths further back to Lee Holdsworth, 6/100ths further back to Jamie Whincup. That's what we love about this racetrack.
And another 1/100th back to Reynolds. So the top 5 cars are separated by 0.14 of a second. So various organisations, obviously different model cars, and the result is very, very close.
And drill down even further, different setups, different individual strategies and theories behind the build around the car. You know what it's like in teams. Each has its own culture. They go about building the car very differently. So for us, looking at them externally, and you look at this car and it's a Ford Mustang, don't be deluded, they are different. If you were to go inside the garage and peel the layers back on the Shell cars versus the Milwaukee car, they do it all differently. There is some commonality in some control parts, and so for them to end up so close is always one of the modern miracles. Cam Waters comes in. He was one of the drivers that didn't get much in the way of seat time in the previous session. They gambled at Monster Energy and Tickford that there wasn't going to be sufficiently decent weather to be able to stick a lap together, but obviously right at the end there was. You made the remark a bit earlier, Mark, and we'll see some external shots shortly. In fact, you can even see it with the onboard. The amount of longitudinal, that is front to rear movement in the Red Bull cars, is very noticeable. So it sits down on the rear under acceleration and pitches over its own nose like that into the final corner, and has the way Shane's got it, dancing on the rear brake into that right-hand hairpin. It's a super slow corner. It's got a big demand to be able to brake squarely on the way in and put power to the road on the way out. Cool
Craig,
shot.
It is a great shot. Craig Louds and I were talking about it just before we started the session, that when you think about the car moving around like that, that's more like a stop-go circuit, that you have the cars set up like that with the amount of pitch that we saw before. But it doesn't, in terms of the characteristic, that does not work at turn 1 or the final corner.
You used to do it a bit when we go to some place like Simmons Plains with your car setup. That was your preference, to make the car strong in the demand under brakes, strong in the demand under acceleration, and sacrifice a little bit of that turning stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's interesting that that's the approach from Red Bull Holden Racing Team. Aero understeer was Van Gisbergen's comment. Did you just get that then? Yeah. So small change there with a gurney flap on the boot lid of the Commodore.
Mark Larkham covered it off yesterday, and I did a little thing this morning next to David Reynolds' car, and the 17's still stuck in the garage at the moment, but it's got a little right angle lip, which we call a gurney flap, across the trailing edge of the lower deck on the Holden Commodore, and it's also had a change to the front wing as well. But because there's next to no time to be able to get an understanding of what it does, it'll take all of the session and some to be able to learn what the cause and effects are of that change. Let's get back into the garage for an update with Greg.
Yeah, and believe it or not, it's like there's 2 problems that reared their head. They've actually made a change and changed the starter motor. We could hear that before, guys. It wasn't engaging. It was sort of like skipping. The starter wasn't throwing out and engaging with the flywheel very well. But also there is an issue, they think, with the ignition. It's not syncing. So the little sync sensor at the front of the engine, it's not finding its firing order, and therefore it just won't fire the engine in any way, shape or form. So they just made an adjustment then under the bonnet. So we'll just see, we'll keep an eye on this, but at the moment, yeah, as you can see up on the high stands, going nowhere, but they have made that, they have changed that starter motor already.
Yeah, that crank sensor issue does jump up from time to time in the industry. And the gentleman that's halfway down the wall there in the black jacket is Craig Haystead, and there he is on the right with the glasses on and the black jacket, and he's just having a look. He's the engine consultant to supercars and does a lot of the R&D an independent analysis for the company, and the amount of knowledge that Craig has about the way in which these systems work is pretty extraordinary.
World class, absolutely.
Yeah. Just interesting, so you can see now on the right front, if you've got the camera shot there, they're actually making a change to the setup on the car. So that would be in recognition of the fact they haven't been able to get the car out and go through their program or their setup program that they were wanting to do for this session. So they're actually making an adjustment to it, which was probably planned for later in the session potentially, guys. So they're having to adjust on the run here because that session is disappearing very, very quickly.
So they go out into these sessions in the 30-minute period, you lose the in-out time, and basically there's only going to be something between 15 to 20 minutes of solid work, and so within that bracket of time there'll be whatever it is, it's different for each organisation, 1, 2 or 3 significant package changes that they put in and try for assessment. So they'll have jettisoned one of those, and they'll move straight to position B, and it'll be a combination of dampers and springs and roll bar settings and ride heights and a myriad of things that will give you an ice cream headache if you went on with the conversation. But they've obviously decided that they can't afford to now try and jam all that work into that time frame.
And the issue with the 20 minutes remaining is that you then, as a consequence, you then work on what you think is the priority. So you go, right, well, we know that we did want to try these other 2 or 3 things, but right now we've only got 20 minutes, so let's make sure we get this right. Boys, change the car, let's go through the last part of this session in a particular way. And every team, as you said, Neil, has got a different plan, a different program as they roll through these sessions. Andy?
And speaking of changes, guys, we just saw Will Davidson come in. They did a rear spring and damper change on that car. What interests me was that the right rear damper, or the left rear damper here, worked so hard through turn 1. I got my infrared temperature gauge out and took a bit of a reading off that body temp. Because it's working so hard and there's so much velocity with the damper going up and down, it's actually generating about 70 degrees in temperature out of that body on the damper when they took the one straight out of Will's car. So an interesting note, something that's very, very specific here.
It's a good point, thanks Andrew. And then just as you were describing that and giving us that update, we took a shot of Lee Holdsworth and you could see the left rear corner of that car working hard, and all of the teams have static dynamometers where they can test the dampers and the behaviour of them and see what happens as they continue to oscillate and what the effects of temperature might be. Some of them will even do lifing tests, certainly at a manufacturer level, to understand what the behaviour of the damper is going to be and what happens to oil as time goes by and it starts to get hot. 70 degrees C is pretty warm.
Absolutely. This place rates number 1 for us in terms of the bump rating. So of all the places that we go to, it's pretty wild.
Spectacle.
Yes, exactly. Now, we spoke earlier when David Reynolds was 5th and there was 0.14 between the top 5 cars. David's now 7th, still 0.14 away. Holdsworth's just gone to the top to wreck my complete story. But there was nothing in it there. Heimgartner's jumped in and so's Whincup. So Heimgartner showing good pace again from the young Kiwi.
And remembering that the Nissan had a little change going to the last event at Tail and Bend as well. I walked into the circuit this morning with Scott Sinclair from Kelly Racing. The jury's still out as to what the effect is, but essentially it's rolled back in time to what it once was. The troubles that they were having with the Nissan were pitch sensitivity, and the car, you could get a lap out of it on occasion, but it was like the 1 in 100 golf swings where you go, oh yeah, half connected, it was what you want it to be, but too many of them weren't. It was too hard to get the car in the box in the sweet zone. So there's a general feeling that they need to have more data and understanding, but I think it's been a step forward. Andre's been doing a ripper job so far this year, and this weekend the car's got new colours on it again in celebration of being one of the 5 Kiwis out there. So he's got matte black colours, and we'll see that as the weekend unfolds. We've gone back to find Jamie Whincup. Gun number 88's on the break, dancing into the right-hander. He's 2nd at the moment, and you've got to go through a few zeros to get to the margin here. He's 0.0018 slower than Holdsworth. Greg?
Yeah, and fired up to 17, so it was the crank angle sensor at the front of the engine. They replaced that, it fired straight away, so that's lowering it. As you can see, boys, so the 17 lost a fair bit of that session, but he'll be heading out there in a second.
There'll be a bit of frustration because there's a procedure in the countdown, if you like, to going into a session. They'll be frustrated that that didn't get picked up until the actual commencement of the session. So now they've got to do a lot of work in a little time. But of the entire field out there, it's probably fair to say they need to do the least amount of work.
Probably, given his performance this year. If you weren't with us at Tailem Bend at our recent race meeting just outside of Adelaide. McLaughlin went into that weekend with a 433-point lead over the championship, and he now has a 573-point lead, so 140-point gain over what was his teammate. It's now Chaz Mostert up in the second.
All black Nissan Altima. Andre Heimgartner comes into the pit lane as Scott McLaughlin, another Kiwi, rolls out of the lane. Meantime, Windcup's done at 1 minute 2.2. Andrew.
Just wandering along the pit lane here, I noticed Chaz Mostert get out of his car. They're doing a front and rear spring and damper change, so a little bit of time. Quizzed on why he got out. He's got a little bit of tightness in his lower back, and he was trying to stretch that out and release the muscle a little bit. If there's any question on whether these guys are athletes, absolutely they are.
It's a fair demand on the brake pedal around here as well, and you actually need to stabilise yourself in the car. Actually being secure and tight in the car is very important in this racetrack. You've got to feel it, so if you're moving around in your belts and you're trying to brace yourself, it doesn't help the cause. But in terms of brake energy around here, it's relatively low as an entire track, but there's a couple of places where you really hook into the brake pedal, one of them at the end of the back straight.
Well, and then you get another one at the hairpin, so it's actually changed the cycling of the brakes. Now, that time that you just rolled out with Windcup, that was his second lap, which that also bodes well for qualifying this weekend, because if you can get a little second bite of the cherry, everyone gets another run. That's a 2.2, and the qualifying or practice record's been a 2.1, so they're not far away from lap record speeds.
Nick Percat, New Zealand safety, Blackwoods Racing this weekend. Got to roll that out gently, or you can get yourself in a tongue tie. So we've seen this car presented in a variety of different colours and liveries so far this year. And good performance for Nick last time out at Tailem Bend in South Australia. Been to the UK since we last saw him. Spent some time again. He's been there before with well-known driver coach Rob Wilson, who's an expat Kiwi that lives and works over there and has done quite a lot of work with drivers. There's quite a few drivers turning to that kind of methodology to basically look at their golf game and see whether they can improve their swing. Quite a lot of people spend time at Paul Morris's facility in Australia as well. Shane Van Gisbergen and Anton spent a fair bit of time in Toyota 86s up there, for example, just to do laps, just to get their racing brain thinking. Corley Jones on screen here, cool drive Holland Commodore, another of the Brad Jones racing cars this weekend, but it is in the same livery as distinct from the other two cars. That's a lucky dip for colours.
So McLaughlin is actually at least now got himself sorted. There's only 14.5 minutes remaining. He's got himself sorted. I heard the guys going through the deletions of what they were going to do. They're talking about betting some brakes and mucking around, but they've knocked that on the head pretty quickly, and they'll be trying to get a real feel of what this car is like. It looks very nervous at the moment, so as soon as he turns the wheel, and we've often seen it this year, as soon as he turns the wheel, he's got to apply some corrective steering. And watch this now and see what the balance is like in the heavy braking zone into 5. A lot of this inside curve you can see there. So as soon as he turned the wheel, he had to turn the wheel back. So that's always, in terms of the correction, a sign of the car being very pointy. Probably a little bit too much. If he stays out there, we'll get a feel coming onto the straight here. Is he going to come in? No. So let's just have a really good look at this one. Across this bump. Its high-speed aero balance is better than the mechanical balance.
We're in that.
So McLaughlin immediately comes up to 5th on that lap, but it looked pretty wild through 2, 3, and 4, plus on the entry and change direction for 5 and 6.
And they want him to hustle and bring it in this lap. So Mostert on a very good lap as well in the first portion of it. Second one gets you through to that position there on the exit onto the back straight, turn 4. He ended up in 5th place, McLaughlin in 6th. Windcup's still at the top of the tree at the moment. Remembering that in the case of McLaughlin, he's 26 years of age now, but if you wind yourself back here to this location in 2013 when he was officially 19 years, 10 months and 3 days old, he was the youngest ever driver to win a supercar race. A pretty big moment in his career. He's gone on to do a bit of that since then.
Yeah, but I was making the point with Lounsey yesterday that I reckon that was the day when you win at a place like this. It's big, fast, brave, commitment-style racetrack. When he won in 2013, it was we all went, "Wow, this kid's pretty special."
He is, and it's proven to be the case. James Courtney, new livery this weekend for the Walkinshaw Andretti United car, together with his teammate Scott Pye. Mobil 1 now in full support on that car. James Golding, car number 34, sister car to Richie Stanaway's car, which was damaged in that earlier session. Richie's out there, by the way, just in confirmation, and he's actually up in 14th at the moment. A little slip off the last corner. Courtney had a shocker, as you described in the conversation with Jess and Craig earlier on before you came up on the Friday in Adelaide, but he actually did a pretty fair job of dragging a result out of it in racing on Saturday and Sunday. But that was a pivotal moment for him on the Friday at Tailem Bend. Back to Shane van Gisbergen. Shane at the moment sitting in 8th position. He's on a 1 minute 2.4412.
His balance of that car's got better. He was having quite a lot of understeer in the fast sections, but that balance has definitely improved. Have a look at the margins, Croppo. There is nothing. Holdsworth is currently second. It's 0.05 away from Whincup. Then 0.05 back to Coulthard. 0.1 covers the top 4 cars with David Reynolds. The margins are extremely close.
Lee Holdsworth's on screen. Just slipped out of the top 10 last time out in South Australia, so he's dropped back into 11th position, and advancing was Anton De Pasquale, who's on screen here. Envirobox, Penrite product on the cars this weekend, and so you can distinguish between 9 and 99 by the bonnet colours and the side of the cars. So you can see clearly that for Anton, green, and for David, he's got a lovely purple, lovely shade of purple on the car.
It's sort of, I think it's his colour. That's nice.
Yeah, he proudly escorted me around the car this morning to show it to me. But nice for him, David Reynolds, that is, to be able to secure a long-term deal with Erebus and Penrite Racing, which was announced yesterday. 10 years. It's a heck of a deal. And remembering that just recently Anton also reconfirmed his tenure with the team. So stability, continuity, very important there with those guys as we go back to Nick Percat. Nick's down in 13th at the moment, but personal best for him in sectors 1 and 2. That lap completed brings him up 6 spots. You're right, those margins are insane. So we've got the top 10 covered by 0.19, and then you go all the way back, as his eyes keep rolling down, to 19th position before you get beyond half a second. And Simona's 19th at the moment. Mark Winterbottom is on screen. He's 14th. Percat, by the way, we just had a glimpse of him a moment ago. He's done the fastest that we've seen in the first sector, which is the exit of turn 4, and here he is, into the back straight.
Remember the flyaway event, we're using the harder of our Dunlop variants. And as a flyaway, everyone arrives with a fresh tyre supply. You don't bring the used tyres across the ditch. And the reality of that is that we get a level playing field. So I'm a big fan of that system. Love to see that system happen everywhere, young Neil, but anyway.
I think there'll be a little bit more joy in that department in 2020, I'm hearing, which will be great. So there'll be a little bit less of a constraint on tyre quantity. So looking forward to seeing what happens when we get to the real happy hour phase now of this session. But from the numbers that we're seeing at present, this is going to peak to be a really fascinating session. And at the moment, the weather's on our side. Dunlop curb cam, beautiful shot of Cam Watersby, bowls it wide through the final corner. See, he didn't put much lock on, and he would have only gently brought the throttle back in to glide himself back onto the racetrack and not excite the car. So there's going to be a bit of this happening as well. Once they get fully bottomed out for speed, what's the behaviour and balance like of the car? Because that little flap on the very trailing edge of that rear wing on the bottom deck, that gurney flap, it's going to have an impact. And as the extension on the front wing will as well. So understanding its effect, it's just a little right angle, it's a piece of carbon that's bonded in there, and it's been done in multi-pieces because of the unique shape of the wing. You can't just put one piece of strip across there. So it's bonded into position, and that tiny little piece can have a pretty profound effect on the way in which a race car behaves.
Certainly does. And it's designed to activate the airflow and continue. So the rear wing, we call it stalling. So from an aerodynamic perspective, there was a complaint that the rear wing above setting 17 would start to stall. And the way that the guys have treated that is to try to reattach the air underneath the wing as a consequence of that gurney being applied to the boot. This is the off for Cam. He did a pretty good job there, because that was, I thought, going to be in Stanaway land then. That was a really big moment, but he was able to regain control and just ease his way back onto the road. That's the same as what happens if your road car goes off the black stuff. You've got to be very, very gentle. If you're on a country road or whatever and the car goes just off the road, you've got to do exactly what Cam Waters just did and apply a very small amount of steering input and come off the throttle, move the car back onto the road, and he did a very nice job of executing that.
So at the moment, there's a vast majority of the field have come in for a think and an adjustment, some data offload, and then contemplate what comes next, because now we're only just inside 6.5 minutes remaining in this session, so we're going to see quite a bit of action. Whincup heads the group at the moment, and that 1 minute 2.2 is very speedy from an historical standpoint. All but equals the qualifying record that his teammate Shane Van Gisbergen set, and it's only a tenth away from his own practice record, Jamie Whincup.
And Scott McLaughlin has just rolled out. They've actually thrown a green set of Dunlop soft tyres on that car. They made a front damper change, but he only really had that one outing, boys. And then he came in, they've made the change. They sat there for a while, not really doing anything to the car. And now he's rolled on a green set. So we'll see what that 17 is capable of. Richard Harris's data engineer did confirm that their program or their plan for that session was compromised massively. So I'd be interested to know what they've been up with.
Well, and the ballast didn't look that great, Merv.
No, it didn't. So there was, as I say, damper change at the front only, the Escapee on this one. So we'll see what it does.
I wouldn't mind betting they've stiffened the front spring, because it looked like it was really wild when he first turned the wheel. And the other thing is that maybe a green tyre, new tyre, might mask that oversteer just a little bit. So I reckon there's two things going on there.
Stanaway, last time we saw this car, it was just exiting the grass at turn 11 off the top of the hill with damage to the left rear corner, and then it ended up in the pit lane exit area. So they've gone to work at Boost Mobile Gary Rogers Motorsport to fix it, and luckily they had sufficient spares and enough time to be able to do that. And he's actually responded pretty nicely. He's up in 18th at the moment. This is what happened earlier in the practice session 1. And it's bad news for the ITM styrene sign there as well. This is the view from on board. Passenger once you're on that grass. And then here he had to really wrestle that car back very gently, because it just wanted to steer itself from the rear. It was actually quite dangerous. We heard Richard say that in the interview afterwards. So they've been able to get that car back out and looking smart once again. So well done to everybody at Boost Mobile, Gary Rogers Motorsport.
So what do you think? Will they knock the practice record off? Green tyre at the end?
Yes.
Pretty good conditions, overcast, cool. A little bit of sunlight that we saw earlier in the session has gone away. So normally when the UV goes away and the conditions are nice and cool, it does affect the overall grip level. There, as I said that, the sun's out down there at the hairpin. Will Davison's now done the fastest first sector, so that bodes well, because that's a little bit of a resurface in that zone down through 3 and 4.
So the temp hasn't moved. It's still stuck at 14.6 according to our little weather station here. And the winds from the west-northwest, 16 gusting 22 k's. So it's been pretty consistent all day. But what there is a bit of dappled sunlight. Just a tiny little bit here. You can see as we pick up with Will Van Gisbergen ready for a run here with 3 minutes and 13 seconds to go. Tim Edwards watching inside.
This is fast.
This is going to be a good time for Will. And it is a 1 minute 1.7. Best number that we've seen at Pukekohe. Well done.
That's a good lap. That's a really good lap.
Holdsworth's on a very good lap as well. So Will did personal best in 1 and 2, but blew everybody away in the third sector. So that's speedy. And don't forget there's been a bit of resurfacing down at 1, 2 and 3, which will also be helping the cause here. We ride with Lee Holdsworth, Bottle Racing, Tickford, Ford Mustang. Love this run out of the hairpin. First, second, third, fourth, building speed, more than 200 kilometres an hour. Direction change through 10, 11. Pause of the throttle, and then it's something of a blind commitment over the top of the hill and out the other side. And what has Lee got in store for us when he crosses the control line? It's a 1 minute 1.6. It's like an auction. The numbers keep getting better.
Fastest lap ever of the place. So the boys down at Tickford there are wrapped with a 1.6 and a 1.7 for Holdsworth and Davison. Now, can I ask you a more complex question? Will McLaughlin knock that time off?
We've got 1 minute and 59 seconds to answer that, and we're watching him now. Let's see what happens. But remember, a heavy compromise because he lost a chunk of the first session to weather, as everybody did. He did get a lap in right at the end of it, good enough for second, and then gave away a chunk of time at the start of this session with a starter motor problem together with a crank trigger sensor problem. So maybe not. You know, you can't give away too much track time because you lose the thread of where things are. We know that the driver, engineer, car combination there at Shell V-Power Racing is a very strong one. It's not an easy thing to do to just jump over the top of this field readily.
Whincup's going to slightly improve his own time, but it's not going to be enough. He does a 1.8. That's a nice job. That's the fastest Commodore lap ever around this place. Scott Pye jumps up 11 spots into 5th. So that's a good response from Walkinshaw Andretti United with a 2.07. So Holdsworth, Davison, Whincup, McLaughlin, Pye.
Now, Scott Pye's had form here before as well. So he was second in 2016. He qualified second that same year as well. Gary Jacobson just completes his lap. He's in 17th position. So can anybody knock off Holdsworth, the fastest lap that we've ever seen in a supercar at Pukekohe? 38 seconds remain in the session. Van Gisbergen's done a brilliant job in the second sector. Keep an eye out for the Red Bull Holden Racing Team entry, currently sitting in 12th. He's actually just jumped up into second spot. He's done a 1 minute 1.7. He misses out by 0.14 of a second. Reynolds gets into the party. David's up in 4th place now. We're coming up to the 15-second mark. Percat, you just saw his lap completed. He's done a 1 minute 1.8.
Courtney do. Courtney down in 14th. Di Pasquale comes up to 8th. Oh, big off. Big off the road for Cam Waters. So that was more severe than the previous one that we saw. He got away with it. He didn't make contact with the fence. So Holdsworth, extraordinary job. Almost 0.15 faster than Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen off the road at the hairpin.
Okay, mate, yeah, no worries, no worries. Moving that won't change. Just watch out for anyone that's steal on the lap.
Nice job, Shane Van Gisbergen. Second fastest in that session, down by about a 10.5. Let's have a look at what happened to Cam over the top of the hill. That's the second excursion, but this time it's all 4 in the grass. He grabs the sign there as well, so that's 2 signs down at the end of today. And this is what happened to Shane Van Gisbergen on the run into the hairpin. You see a bit of this from time to time. Just locks the rear brakes and then he's released it, and that just took him out into the grass. Can't get too far wide of the mark down there, though. We end up in the gravel trap. So, great session. And Lee Holdsworth ends up sitting proud of the charts there. 1 minute 1.6 to be 0.14 of a second faster than Shane Van Gisbergen. And this is confirmation of the form that we've been seeing in the recent past. If you look at his trend line so far this season, it's been getting stronger and stronger.
It does look like the Holden is better off than before.
Seems so, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Around a big fast circuit like this, for Van Gisbergen to be second, David Reynolds 4th, Percat 5th, Whincup 6th. It's definitely, from a strength perspective around here, they look better.
And the times are crazy.
Yep.
Holdsworth to Whincup is still inside 0.2 of a second, and then that top 10 are inside half a second. And you look on the next page here and you've got to go beyond Chaz before you break out of the half-second zone, which is about the snap of the fingers and not much more. So really intense session. A lot of work done by a lot of people pretty frantically in that condensed session. Jack LeBrock in position number 24. Let's go to Andrew.
Lee Holdsworth, what a sensational lap at the end of practice 2 there to end up on the top of the timesheets.
Thanks, Jonesy. Yeah, it was lit. Car's good. Yeah, we did some changes there, and really it came alive. I mean, we came out with a pretty good base car, so we've just been searching for that little bit extra just to get us, up in that, top 3 recently, because it's just been outside of it. But no, it's good. I feel like we've really found something now. We'll wait and see though.
There's no question on tyre quality. Everybody comes here with the same bank. You ran greens at the end.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's always nice to know that everyone's on the same tyres, but you know, this track is super quick at the moment, and it's only going to get faster and faster. With the new surface down at in Sector 1, it's just super quick. So, no, I'm stoked. You know, I couldn't ask for a better way to start the weekend, but we just need to carry it through now.
You should be happy, mate. Well done.
Thanks, buddy. Cheers.
So a really challenging session for the 17 of Scott McLaughlin. We'll quickly grab him. Doing lots of little body movements there, sitting in your chair, mate, trying to explain to Ludo what the car was doing. Clearly, we were watching it on the laps you did do, which weren't many, and it looked like a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, it's quite initially the turn is really good, but just I don't have enough in the middle. But the problem is when it's been so good in the initial, I get quite loose, so it's quite snappy on the exit. So yeah, it's something to work on. We obviously didn't get as many laps in as we wanted, but it's all right.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting. Obviously, the car gets warmed up, you know, you get pushed out, it's all been ready to go, and then all of a sudden it won't start. And then there was a starter issue as well at the same time. I mean, these things happening in strange situations.
Yeah, it is, but, you know, at least we got back out. The boys were all over it, and just we got back out and we were able to do some laps, but definitely, like, doing those two laps, I was like, far, I was holding on because it's just like, it's hard to work around here. But when you haven't had any laps as well, it's even harder.
Yeah, and a big compromise though. How much did you miss out on trying to get through then in that session?
Oh, a fair bit. Like, we wanted to do a little bit there with the race runs as well, but also it just takes a bit to warm up as a driver, just get the gonads right and all sorted. But yeah, it's all good.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.
Chaz Mostert, during that session, I saw you get out of the car. You're trying to release your lower back. You just got out very gingerly there. What's going on here, mate?
Yeah, a couple of little things going on, but we'll sort it out. So other than that, pretty average session for us. I think some of our team cars are at the pointy end, so we'll look at them. But it's always the game here in New Zealand, who saves tyres and who doesn't. So car felt pretty good. Track's really awesome for the first sector now. You're really puckering up going through there. The cars are going super fast into that turn 4 there. So yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend racing. Looking forward to it.
And is that what's contributing to your lower back issue?
Yeah, just trying to hang on, as always. So all good.
We'll let you go, mate. He was running off to go straight to the physio and get that attended to. So hopefully that sorts out for tomorrow.
Dave Reynolds, pretty tricky session to start the start of the day, but a really intense session to finish it off, and a really nice way for you to finish off the day.
Yeah, great start to Pookie. I was just having
Watch your eyes there, Dave.
I was just having a discussion with Daniel, like who killed John F. Kennedy, so a bit of a weird discussion to start the interview, but yeah, no, I'm really happy with my. Just threw something at me.
That is from your team boss.
What was that? A lolly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm really happy. My car's not bad. It's just, you know, got a new aero thing we've got to sort of tune up in the car, so hopefully there's a bit more speed to come. But the track's looking good. You know, resurfaced through turn 1 to 4, and it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun here.
Can you feel those differences with the car at all this